Welcome back to Mortgage 101, your guide to homeownership with Clinton Wilkins and myself, Todd Veinotte, right here on City News 95.7. You like saying City News 95.7?
I like saying City News. You know, it's a new brand, and you know, I think it's hard for us sometimes to remember. For me, I was on the old green brand for so long that it's hard to just keep it top of mind. I think it's probably been a good transition for the listeners. You know, there's one website, you know, like one email, everything goes to the same place. Like, I can understand why it makes sense. So, you know, I think it was a good transition.
What's been your favorite aspect of doing this?
I think it's really around education. And, you know, I'll bring it back to November. We've done 4 shows, 2 live and 2 of this podcast style, which you guys are listening to now. And it really was around education. You know, this month we had a lot of great guests. You know, we had guests talking about, you know, alternative lending. We had a lawyer here today and, you know, president of Centum Financial Group. We've also brought in realtors and, you know, had a lot of perspective around, you know, what does credit mean? You know, income, mortgages for self-employed. We've talked about assets and, you know, building net worth. And it's really all been around education. And I think that's so powerful.
So in the last few minutes that we do have, drill home some of the things that you want people to be thinking about here.
Well, I think that when we, you know, end November and we're finishing Financial Literacy Month, you know, I think we need to think about ways how we can keep, you know, financial literacy going through December. December can be really a very tough time for a lot of people, Todd. I'm cognizant of that. You know, there's the holidays, and I think a lot of us tend to kind of overspend, even, you know, when we don't need to. I think the holidays, sometimes it's about, you know, experiences, and it's about being around friends and family and all these things. And it's not necessarily about these material things. And I think the last couple of years has really kind of brought that home, at least to me. Mm-hmm. You know, it's been a challenging time. We've been away from friends and family kind of for so long, you know, with COVID. And, you know, for us, it's really about how can we maybe spend that time versus maybe going out and, you know, buying these material things. And I think for a lot of our listeners, maybe 2022, you know, they may be able to, you know, fulfill those dreams of home ownership. And, you know, I hope that, you know, we'll certainly have more conversations around what that looks like going into next year. And, you know, and early next year, we're going to talk about Mary Detmus. And I know that's something that we're kind of excited about. And I won't dive too deep into it. But, you know, Mary Detmus is obviously something that we're super passionate about. And, you know, going into the new year, sometimes people just want to like lose weight, Todd, or, you know, be more healthy, or, you know, pick up a new goal. But, you know, I think the goal going into 2022, and I think even going into this year in 2021, was around financial health and wellness. And I hope that we added to that. You know, the other thing that I really hope that we did, Todd, honestly, this month, I hope, you know, some of the listeners that are parents had conversations around financial health and wellness and financial literacy at the dinner table. You know, these are not things that we talked about as kids. Like, you and I have said this, like, our parents never talked about credit. We didn't talk about income. We didn't talk about assets. We didn't talk about, you know, home ownership. And I think a lot of young people today, home ownership is not even on their purview. Mm-hmm. It's not even something that they're even, you know, interested in.
Well, even beyond that, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you mentioned that, but people's needs and wants and whatever the difference is, and there is a difference, were quite different than we grew up. I shared a bedroom with my brother. Mm-hmm. We had 5 or 6 of us in a bungalow, a 3-bedroom bungalow. And I think that's been altered quite a bit as to what's acceptable today and what people will spend money on and prioritize. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the priorities are certainly different. I think first-time home buyers at one time were first-time home buyers, and they would buy that entry-level home. You know, it's the bungalow, maybe it's a semi-detached. You know, it's really what we would consider a starter home. I think first-time home buyers today have a different expectation than the first-time home buyers did even when I started doing this 15 years ago. And, you know, for better or worse. And, you know, people's obviously their needs and maybe their tastes in these things have changed. But, you know, we even talked about like multi-generational housing. That's not a thing. I don't know any young people today that really are like, yes, my dream in life is to buy a home so I can move my parents into the basement.
Yeah. But maybe it should be in some cases.
And maybe it should be. And maybe it needs to be, Todd.
Maybe it needs to be.
Maybe it needs to be for people to become homeowners in the future. You know, we need more income. And as the housing prices increase, obviously, probably incomes are going to increase, but are they going to increase at the same level? We oftentimes are needing 2 incomes in a household to make it work. Mm-hmm. And that's reality. And that's where I think we're going to see maybe the culture change over the next few years. And I think that we need to open our minds to that, but also have those conversations. And, bring it back to, younger people today and maybe not having that dream to be a homeowner. They're missing out on a huge opportunity to build wealth for themselves.
Do you think that's going to right itself?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I hope so.
I think, the needs and wants of people have changed. We're more of an instant gratification culture probably now than we have been before. And home ownership isn't an instant gratification.
Yeah, isn't it
Sometimes it takes a long time.
Exactly. That's
and it takes a lot of planning.
Especially now.
Yeah, even more. It takes even more planning now. And
that's
it takes even more advice.
That's why people go and buy a new car instead.
But you know what? You can't even buy a new car today, Todd. I just read an article online the other day. Yeah. You need to order a car in some cases a month, 6 months, and sometimes a year in advance.
Yeah.
So I think this instant gratification is changing. And I think the culture's changed. And I think we're kind of changed forever after, COVID. We've changed the way that we've transacted. I've changed the way that I've done business. We've adapted new technology. We've done a lot of things, electronically. We've changed the communication that we're having with our customers. And, for me, it's pretty empowering. I've been doing the same thing for 15 years. It's nice to learn a new skill, but it's also nice to figure out what the needs are for the customer. And I think that we've learned even more over the last, I'm going to say almost 2 years. Mm-hmm. We've learned even more that value is more important than maybe the money. And what value can we add to the conversation? And what value can we add to financial literacy? And what value can we add to homeownership?
So besides obviously getting information out there and getting your brand out there and doing all of this, you feel as though the last number of months doing this, perhaps there are people out there better positioned. You can say that. I can say that confidently. To purchase a home than otherwise would have been, and that's a good thing, obviously.
That is a great thing. And you know what? If people transact with us or transact with their bank or transact with another mortgage broker, as long as they got some advice, I am happy. And I think that we've done our job. And, we've broken down some of these barriers and we've had, some tough conversations. It's not nice necessarily to talk about some of these things. It doesn't necessarily feel good. People that go through hardships or, might have been going through a divorce and all these things. But, these are conversations that we need to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the end, if you're doing a deal, get your ducks in a row. Don't be in too big of a rush. Deal with it.
Don't be in a rush.
Our lawyer said earlier.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Get some unbiased advice. And, obviously, we believe in using mortgage brokers. I'm a mortgage broker. I think that, obviously, unbiased mortgage professionals provide the best advice. Mortgage brokers have access to 40 different lenders sometimes. And, when you walk into maybe the financial institution that you do your everyday banking with,
yes,
they have one solution. And, they have one solution to help you. And that person that you're dealing with, is trying to manage 40 different products. And mortgage lending is very, very complex, and I think that's more of a reason than ever to, seek the advice of an unbiased mortgage professional.
Well, Clinton, on behalf of City News 95.7, you've been a great partner for a number of years now, and for myself, and it's been a real pleasure working with you, and it's my sincere hope and our radio station's hope that we continue this partnership for many years to come.
Yeah, I'm super excited, and, we wish everyone a safe and healthy rest of 2021, and we'll be back.
We will be back.